Hello, Dimitri. How are you today?
Hello, Thodoris. I'm pretty well now that I'm watching you in my laptop.
Me too.
So, we are two rock freaks from Greece that doing this show. Which show, Thodoris?
So, you are watching In There Tonight with Dimitris.
And Thodoris?
And Dimitri, I think you will agree that today is a very special day for us.
Very special day for
Because,
us.
yeah, because our guest is one of the biggest musicians of the whole rock music,
Of course, rock history in the making tonight at In the Air Tonight. Because our guest, as you know already, Thodoris, is
Steve Hackett. Hello, sir.
Hello,
Hello.
sir.
Hi,
Hello.
everybody. How are
Hello.
you doing?
It's an honor. It's an honor to
Yes,
have you
yes.
here with us tonight. Thank you very
Me
much.
too. Me
Thank
Thank
too.
you
you
so
very
much for being
Nice to
here
talk to
for
you.
us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great honor for two guys from Greece to
Thank you.
meet their idols through
Ah,
Skype. Thank you very much for being here.
thank you.
So let's immediately begin our chat with our first section of the show. It's in the air tonight, and our first section is about top five lists.
Okay.
So, Mr. Steve Hackett, let's begin with your top five albums.
Okay. Yeah. It's a very difficult choice because, you know, you could have a top five albums with just the Beatles alone, but
Of course.
Okay, yes.
they had so much publicity. I'll talk about some other people. Um, Kate Bush, The Kick Inside, I think was a great debut album.
Let's hear something for the album, please.
Wuthering Heights is very interesting, and I think the track "The Man with the Child in His Eyes" is very beautiful. Two very accomplished tracks in different ways. Um, I can give you some other albums if you like.
Of course,
Of
we want
course.
five of them. Let's go to number
Yeah.
four.
Okay. Well, I used to go and see this band when they were still before they'd recorded their first album, and it was King Crimson.
Wow, wow.
And many of them became very, close friends of mine. And I worked with several of them. In the Court of the Crimson King, I think again was a stunning debut album by a new band, 1969. I think also Joni Mitchell. There are many really great albums from Joni Mitchell. Um,
Have you any best album from Johnny?
well, I think Ladies of the Canyon is a very interesting album. It's very beautiful. I know many musicians feel the same way. We're kind of spoilt for choice because so
Mm.
much of her work was very good. I would choose another Canadian of Indian, American Indian extraction, indigenous, Buffy Sainte Marie.
Oh,
And the album, her debut album again was It's My Way. And it was full of heartbreaking love songs and protest songs and a little bit like a female Bob Dylan in a way.
oh,
I think
like
she,
Johnny Mitchell, like Johnny Mitchell.
well, in a way, but perhaps even more social conscience with it. Um, and actually, she was the one who helped Joni Mitchell get her first record deal. It goes back that far.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great trivia.
yeah,
Yes.
now there's an album from the British blues scene from 1966. Again, I used to go and see John Mayall quite a bit in the early days, and I loved the guitarists that worked with him. But I think the best album is John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric
Mm.
Clapton.
Yeah.
Um, I used to see a lot of John Mayall when Peter Green was playing with them before he formed Fleetwood Mac, and they were both stunning blues guitarists in the early days before there was a huge following. This is pre the involvement with the Beatles and all of that kind of,
Yeah.
celebrity that went with that, and the whole explosion that was Fleetwood Mac with all of its highs and lows.
Hmm.
So that's 5 albums,
Yeah.
for different reasons. I love them all.
The amazing thing with those albums is that you have lived many of them in their beginning from their heroes,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
amazing for us to know that.
Yes, yeah. I think many people made very great debut albums. Many of them women, and I think that in some ways the women make the best writers. Perhaps the men make the best players,
Wow.
producers, all the rest. I can't speak for everybody, of course, because there are great writers throughout the world. There was Lennon McCartney, there was Jimmy Webb in America. I think these were the best writers, along with Bob Dylan, of course. And I haven't even chosen one Bob Dylan album there, but
Yeah.
if I had to choose a favorite, that would be Highway 61 Revisited.
Yeah.
Um, but there are many great albums from Dylan. It's spoiled for choice.
Hmm.
Um,
And especially in the early days.
yes,
In the early days, Bob Dylan for me has only very very nice albums.
yes, I think again the quality of
When
the
I mean in
writing.
the early days, let's say in the first 15 years, for me, I'm talking as a listener.
Yeah, well, he did very, very important work, and so many of those songs were covered wonderfully by
Hmm.
other people. Um, but he was the brain and the heart of that movement. I know he felt that he didn't want to lead the protest movement. He didn't want to be saddled with that. But nonetheless, when you've written something of the power of blowing in the wind,
Hmm.
with the performance of Peter, Paul, and Mary, who don't often get a mention these days, but there's a reappraisal of what happened in the 1960s, where production was in its infancy, but social awareness had become highly developed. The protest movement, the idea of the Vietnamese War, the backdrop of that, so many pacifist songs that were so very, very good. And people like Pete Seeger was banned on American radio, considered to be too subversive, the man who brought Bob Dylan
Yeah.
to
To the
the
public.
public in a
Yeah.
way with
Yeah.
his with his blessing. Um, it's very interesting. Some of these people, all they needed was their voice and their guitar and their songs, and the picture was complete.
Yeah.
Rock music isn't like that. For rock music, most of the time um, we need electricity, we need bluster, we need anger, speed,
Yeah.
technique, all of those things. And of course, classical music for me was a huge thing when I was growing up, and still is. Just spent an afternoon with 2 keyboard players today, and we were playing Tchaikovsky, Schubert, um, and it's very strange. Debussy, we were playing. All those pieces came up, and of course, for me as a guitarist, Segovia was very important. Segovia was just as important for me as all of the blues players,
Yeah.
the incredible blues players in the early 1960s. Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Jeff Beck, all English. But you also had Jimi Hendrix, and at one point you could go and see any of these guys any night of the week in London, probably.
That's a
In whole
paradise.
places.
Yes.
That's a guitar paradise.
Yeah.
It
For
was, yes,
us
it
and
was,
for
yes. An electric guitar paradise. You're quite right. Absolutely, yes,
yes, yes.
yes. You can pay homage to that forever.
And let me add you to that
Well,
holy
thank you
fiveness
very
or
much.
something like that. Of
Thank you.
course. Of course. So,
Yes.
Okay, so
Todori.
Mr. Hackett, as you just told us your top five albums,
Yes.
and you just mentioned a very nice singer, can you please share with us your top five with singers? Five
With
singers you
singers.
like.
Um, well, I think I was very lucky to work with Richie Havens. I
Amazing.
worked with him in the late 1970s. Fantastic singer, um, extraordinary guy,
Mhm.
fantastic, again, part of the peace movement. Um, American singers, I would say um, there was a wonderful singer, Roy Orbison, a
Roy
singer of
Orbison, of course.
ballads, an
Of
Yes.
course.
extraordinary sound. Another singer in the blues, I think the guy who sounded like he'd lived and died and came back to tell you the story, Howlin' Wolf.
Yeah.
Just incredible voice. Um, Apart from that, it gets a little more difficult because that covers so much. Um, Singers, oh my goodness me! I think John Lennon was a great singer. I liked his voice very
Really?
much.
Really?
Yes, yes, yeah,
That's a surprise
yeah,
for top lists of singers.
yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh no, it's personal, Dimitri.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course, of course, of course.
Of
But
course,
and
it's always very subjective.
Of
Um,
course.
yes,
you will
Of
never get an
course.
agreement,
of
amongst
course, of course.
everybody
Yes.
about, who is a great singer.
Yeah. And
Um,
we have a bridge with Genesis, of course, with John Lennon, that he
yes.
has told that Genesis was one of the best bands of his era.
Well,
Then, back then.
he said yes. He was when we were still a very young band and
Yeah.
struggling. He gave an interview in New York and said that Genesis was one of the bands that he was listening to. So I know that much, and um, and so I'm very proud that he chose our very young band at that
Yeah.
time when he was 10 years older than us.
Mhm.
I'm born
Hmm.
in 1950. He was born in 1940, and we grew up listening to his stuff and his fabulous band, who have still not been beaten, have not been equaled in
Yeah.
terms of the breadth of music and the fact that they worked with musicians from all over the world, many different styles, orchestral musicians, blues musicians. Um, in a way, it's as if everything became mainstream in the 1960s, the explosion. In a way, it's as if the Beatles changed the world. Suddenly, the world was in touch with itself. You didn't feel excluded if you were from somewhere other than London or New York or LA. Suddenly, you could be an Indian musician
Hmm.
and you could be hip for being exotically Far East. And that's a wonderful thing. Of course, Greece is famous for inventing. We think you invented the guitar, the kithara. All of that
Yeah.
goes
From
right
the
back. So
ancient, from the
Yes,
ancient Greece.
yes.
the
Yes.
ancient instrument. And I've worked with people who play the sitar, the tar, the guitar,
Hmm.
and I'm about to work with somebody from Uzbekistan who plays the dutar.
Oh,
So
what?
all of these things are
Yeah.
from the family of the tar, which means gut. So we think that guitar means gut, um, and I guess all of these instruments are from the gut, but they're also from the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Well,
are. They
yeah,
are
of
from the
course.
heart, yes. For
So
sure.
let's go to our third top five list. Of
Sure.
course, your own instrument.
Yeah.
Let's do some top five of guitar players.
Oh wow. That's very difficult.
We know
Um,
that.
I think for me with classical, it's Andres Segovia because of his dedication, his tonality, his sense of rhythm, um, the very lyrical way which he played. Um, I think of Django Reinhardt in jazz because He had limited mobility with some of his fingers because of an accident, a fire that fused some of these fingers together. Extraordinary to think what he was able to do, and there's no multi-tracking there. What you hear is what you see is what you
One
get.
guitar, one
Yeah,
guitar.
one guitar, yes.
Amazing.
Working with Stefan Grappelli, with the Hot Club du Paris, all of that. That's incredible stuff. Or Hot Club of France, that's incredible stuff. So how many guitarists have I mentioned there? Two. Okay. Other guitarists. Well, I think I mentioned, all these people in. I think there's a flamenco guitarist I should mention. There's one called Paco Peña.
Oh,
Most of the time people think of Paco de Lucia, who was
of course.
also fabulous. But
Oh,
Paco Peña, I have an album of his, and it's just extraordinary. It doesn't sound possible. Incredibly fast, incredibly rhythmic. Whenever I think I've played fast, I listen to that and I think, yeah, there's always someone else who does something that you wish you could do yourself. But
do you like playing fast guitar? Is something that you are familiar to?
what is the funny thing? I think that speed is it's like a gear, like when you're driving a car. Sometimes you want to drive fast. Other times, to enjoy the journey, sometimes to go slowly is the best way. So I do enjoy playing fast sometimes, but it's there is no virtue in playing fast all the time, because you just wear out the listener. I think you can show someone in 5 seconds if you play fast. All right. But more than that, I think it's about pacing a solo. It's about playing is about many, many more things. So other guitarists, I think I mentioned Jeff Beck. When I worked with some famous guitarists, I did some stuff with Steve Howe. We had a band called GTR. And I worked with Brian May, talking about famous guitarists. And they both said Jeff Beck was the guy. And I was saying the same thing. So all three of us were fans of Jeff Beck.
Why is that?
I think it's probably the early use of distortion and effects and sustain, vibrato, all of those things where Jeff Beck wasn't just coming from one place. Sometimes it morphed into other perspectives. And his melodic sense was very strong. So he still comes up with great stuff.
Really, yeah. It has some amazing collaborations, and just with his fingers. That's the incredible thing.
Yes.
He plays too much with his fingers, and that's incredible. To have this tonality, that fast, that pace is amazing.
Well, this is the thing. I use the nails myself when I'm playing.
As a classic.
But I do that the same thing with electric as well. So I'm only really using a plectrum if I'm playing the charango, which is a Peruvian instrument, and I use it as a mandolin very often, a mandolino. And I use it sometimes with the fingers, but sometimes with a pick. It's the same thing with the koto. I play the koto usually with either the skin or with the nails, or if I want to get
vibrato.
Vibrato, yes.
Sustain
vibrato effect, then with a pick. But most of the time, I'm a player with the fingers. That's what I do. It means there's certain things that are possible that I don't think are possible if you're holding a plectrum.
Yeah, and that's what defines the melodies of the early Genesis. as far as I am concerned, because your fingers did something very innovative, but we'll come back later to that
Later
stuff
on, yes.
later
Sure.
on. So,
Uh,
we have one more place for you, for the guitar
yes.
players.
Guitar players. Oh, very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, we know that.
Who do we choose? Well, the man who died just the other day is Peter Green,
Peter Green.
and I used to go and watch him when I was 16 years old, and he was in John Mayall's band, and everyone was saying Eric Clapton was really great with John Mayall, but this guy live was every bit as good. And I think that the tragedy for him is that he never really realized just how great he was. And I think he always felt that he was an imposter or not really the great master that he was. But he always had this humility, um, and it's a great tragedy that he wasn't able to function at peak for most of his life. But the legacy of what he left in the early days was something quite rare. And I was listening to something today that he did, and it's a version of a song called So Many Roads. It's a blues classic. The John Mayall version has incredible guitar from the young Peter Green. Slow blues, incredible speed, dexterity, passion.
Of course.
Fantastic.
And this is why he wrote such great songs with Phil Mac.
Well, yes, as a songwriter, this was another facility, of course.
Yeah.
I think that can't be underestimated. I mean, if I could mention Jimi Hendrix as well, we think of him as a guitarist, but also he was a great songwriter, and
Yeah.
that's very important. Those songs do get covered by others,
Mm.
um,
And it's too
particularly
bad.
live.
It's too bad he died so young.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
a
It's,
tragedy.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Of course.
Okay.
So let's begin the next section that is more easy for you now
Maybe.
after
Maybe.
those top five lists, maybe.
Yes.
So that's section two, and it's about your own music, of course, after all those other artists. So, Thodori, let me
Yeah. Yeah.
introduce the first question that is about your next release, of course. In the
yes,
next couple of days, your new live album Selling England by the Pound and Spectral Mornings, live at
yep,
Hammersmith, as
yep,
it is the title, will be released. The whole Selling England by the Pound and your own solo album,
yep.
what are the specifications you want from your musicians to play that kind of songs? Genesis and your previous solo works.
Yeah. Well, over the years, I've had a lot of different bands, and I've worked with some incredible musicians. Um, but the band that I have currently, um, they have immense capability. A number of them are really jazz musicians, I
Of course.
think, and they're able to play rock standing on their head in a bucket, you know.
Hmm, hmm.
So they play with an intensity and an accuracy which is extraordinary. Our keyboard player, Roger King, is also a great arranger and engineer and orchestrator.
He's
Uh,
amazing. He's amazing.
he's amazing,
He's
and he's done
amazing.
amazing work with me recently. Some new stuff we've been doing, um, and he's very self-effacing. Very uh, he never seems to get excited. It's extraordinary. It's a part of his persona. Um, and we have a singer who does the
Ned.
Genesis stuff, Peter
Ned.
Gabriel. Yeah, Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. Nad Sylvan has that kind of Genesis voice. He's a Swedish American guy.
Yeah.
We have another Swedish guy, Jonas Reingold, who is an incredible bass player. Whether he's playing rock or jazz or whatever, you know, whether he's playing fretless or he's playing upright bass or Rickenbacker. He does all of that.
As Mr. Beggs, that you had also
Yes,
collaborated with.
Nick Beggs is also an incredible bass player, and also he's an incredible stick player. Is Nick Beggs. On drums, I have Craig Blundell, who
Another one from Stephen Wilson's band as
yeah,
Nick Beggs.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, I was working with Nick Beggs before Stephen Wilson.
Yeah, we
But,
know
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
I think all bands are the same. You know, we all share. It's like musical chairs in
Of
England,
course.
really. And there've been a lot of guys I've worked with from King Crimson and from Yes, and also I think this sort of mixture of Genesis and Yes and King Crimson is something that's gone round. I've Phil Collins, and I have worked either with these people on record or live jamming or, you know, whatever. Jack Sick.
Rock history in the
Yeah,
making.
it is. I'm very proud to be part of that rock history with Chris Squire and Steve Howe and Pete Banks, the original guitarist of Yes. Also, yeah, there's just so many of these guys. John Wetton, the late great John
Yeah.
Wetton, the late great Chris Squire, who were great guys, great friends of mine, and we played together on one of the boats doing Cruise to the Edge. We did a version of All Along the Watchtower with all three of us, and yeah, that's on YouTube. It's a very happy memory for anyone who wants to see
You'll
what
find
Okay.
that band
our
was like.
viewers will find it in the comments, of course, in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
description of the video,
What
for
you can
sure.
see,
Okay.
it was a bunch of guys all having fun live,
Yeah.
and it was
Okay.
great fun working with these guys. They were incredible. I
Mm-hmm.
did an album with Chris Squire called Squack It. We did this together,
Yeah,
and he was also on some of my stuff, and I was on some of his stuff.
yeah.
He did an album of Christmas songs, which
Wow.
is when we
Yeah.
started working together for the first time. Um, he had a thing called Chris Squire's Swiss Choir, and
A
Okay.
all
great
full of
title.
hymns and choir. There we go.
Tell us something. As you chose to perform live, Selling England by the Pound and Spectral Mornings
Yeah.
in their entirety in your new live album, is there any connections between these two albums, and that was your choice?
Well, I think that Selling England by the Pound is from the time when John Lennon said he was listening to us. So for me, it was already my favorite Genesis album, and then it just gave it the extra seal of approval. Spectral Mornings was the first album I did with my own touring band, and we premiered some of that stuff live in front of audiences, so it had the chance of being road tested. And there was an aspect of world music with the koto and the Chinese instrument, or actually the Vietnamese instrument, as it happens, the Oriental harp, the Chinese harp, the koto, the dine shine, as they call it in Vietnam. So there was an aspect of the Orient. There was also the influence of Spanish guitar, nylon guitar, the influence of that. So there's an aspect of world music, and it was also the first time I'd worked with a team of harmony singers who came across with a sound that was, in its own way. There were some great harmony bands. There were the Beatles, there was Crosby, Stills, there was
Yeah.
the Byrds, there was um, some fantastic harmony bands. But the harmony sound that we all had together was quite exquisite, and I was very proud of that. That's why I think that album became a favorite of fans. They tended to mention that one. It's old now, so the production is of its time, which is why doing most of it live, there's a kind of upgraded sound, and it's wonderful to do that. On the same live album, there's also some songs from the latest album, and I was saying that there was something that Stephen Wilson did the surround mix of this new live one, and DVD, Blu-ray,
Yeah,
all of that.
amazing producer. As
Yeah,
Steve
and
Wilson is an amazing producer.
he said he really liked. There's a track called "Under the Eye of the Sun," which is
Yeah,
from the latest album. So
and the last
that
video
album,
clip,
yeah,
that you have
that's right.
released. Yeah,
So
yeah.
there was this thing that for me it was three favorite albums that were all from different eras in a way: early '70s, late '70s, and then right up to the present day. You know, this is almost 50 years later, and but somehow still felt like it was. If there was something I was trying to say, it came across somewhere between these three albums.
Albums. Yeah. Okay. So, how's the process of writing a book in comparison to writing an album?
Well, it's a much longer commitment. It took much longer to write. You could say that it took, all of the years
Yeah.
ever since I was born to
For the
write that book.
concept. For the
You
concept.
draw
Yeah.
on all your experiences, as a child, as a young man, as a grown up, all of that stuff. And so I wanted it to come across as if I was having a conversation with somebody. I didn't want it to be too formal, the style, and I wanted to reveal as many aspects of things that I thought were important in my life, and other people might not be aware of, like the aspect of being aware of the world of spirit and psychic experiences and healing experiences, both as a recipient and as a
Giver. And
yes,
Giver, yes.
and this, in a way, I think has to do with the wider context of music in its fullest sense, and harmony and healing and re-energizing, and the mystical side of music.
Mhm.
So that was something that I started talking about in the book, and there's been a lot of interest in that. So at some point, I hope to write another book and share that with my wife and her experiences in this, and talk more about that, because I think people are fascinated to know that the age-old questions of where do we come from, why are we here, where are we going?
yeah.
Is this it? Is it the end, or are we indeed, immortal spirits in human bodies? Which, for me, I've done a lot of research into this, and my own experiences bear out the idea that there are no real tragedies in a sense. There's only delayed triumphs, and I think that
Mhm.
we will continue. I know that's very important to me. I know it was important to John Lennon at a certain point. The idea of we all shine on,
Yeah.
like the moon and the stars and the sun. And of course, I agree, absolutely.
Have you contacted any Genesis members during the time that you wrote your autobiography for,
Um,
for for anything missing, or for in order to share with them some things or anything?
well, I actually sent some of them the book, and because I thought, they might be interested to read what I said about them, and I think I haven't heard anything, because Genesis is um, a very competitive band, and I think it's partly due to their upbringing, that they came from a school that was designed to make you either you were going to be the next prime minister, or you were going to be a failure. They were brutalized by a very Spartan system that was designed to turn them into world leaders. And I think to be a world leader, um, I think it's it's a very difficult thing, because I think there's a certain amount of dehumanizing that goes on. So I think that they've all been involved in their own way with rehumanizing. And I'm speaking for them, and they probably disagree profoundly if you get to speak to them. But I think over time, I've had time to reflect on this, and luckily, I'm still in touch with one or two of them, and I think it was an incredible band. I was very lucky to be part of that, and we were lucky to find each other, I think.
Of course. They were lucky to have you also.
Well,
Yes.
I think it was lucky all round. I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've reflected on this. I think um, every band will have the aspect of someone who controls it more than everyone else, but each band is the sum of all of the participants, it seems to me. So, we talk about the Beatles, and what was the importance of these four guys, and the importance of George Martin, who was a great facilitator for them. First of all, giving them the chance to record, and then the same guy who's able to come up with orchestral arrangements of the quality of Eleanor Rigby, I'm the Walrus, songs that we've all lived with all our lives, and a standard to which we aspire in terms of writing, arranging. What is that? Where are those details coming from? The world of classical music and pop and rock, there are no barriers with writing of
Mm-hmm.
that degree of quality. I mean, I didn't mention Revolver or Sergeant Pepper because I know that most rock musicians will choose Sergeant Pepper because it's a great monument to art. It's great storytelling. It's extraordinary. I've met people all over the world who've said they learned to speak English by listening to the Beatles. The Beatles were great teachers. They didn't realize they were doing that. Guys who were recording stuff in German, that's what they were doing. They were recording "I Want to Hold Your Hand" in German because that was the idea of Germany being a huge market at that time, and Germany was important for them with their roots.
Yes.
These guys
Hamburg.
singing
Yeah.
in
Yes,
fluent
yes.
German. It's
Okay.
So,
incredible stuff.
yeah. So, Mr.
Yeah.
Hackett,
Yeah,
me and Thodoris are big fans of GTR album.
right.
We,
And in general for the melodic rock,
yeah,
melodic hard rock, and all this
all members of
genres.
GTR, including you, of course, are some of our best musicians ever. So,
Yes.
we are too sad that there was not a second album. Why is
Yes.
that?
Well, there was a live album,
Yeah,
and
yeah, of
there's
course.
also
No, yeah, yeah. We mean for a second studio
yes,
album.
and there
We
was
know for the live.
extra material on that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that from the outside, something which has the pressure of being a supergroup means that you've got one album to establish
Mm.
this huge rise of success and all of the media that went with that. I think that there were lots of pressures, economic pressures, the pressures of the 1980s. And also, I think when you have two guitarists, somebody said to me, was it one guitarist too many? And of course, usually
Sorry.
bands have one guitarist, or if they have two, it doesn't last very long. The Stones had Keith Richards and Brian Jones.
Yeah, yeah.
In the early days, they were extraordinarily impressive guitarists. To me, I was learning stuff, watching these guys, listening to them with my tongue hanging out. There you
Rolling
go.
Stones t-shirt, yeah.
There you
Yes,
go.
yes.
That's right. And so and of course you had Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page in the Yardbirds for a while, but it doesn't last for long.
Yeah.
There's this kind of volatile quality that guitarists have. They blow up, their amps blow up, they blow up.
Okay.
Mike Rutherford and Steve Hackett.
Well, yes, that's right. Mike Rutherford, Steve Hackett. And Mike Rutherford is an incredible musician and writer, and you know, we did many great things together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that guitarists find it very difficult to continue to share the stage with each other because
Okay.
it's a,
Okay.
I don't know why that is. It seems to be easier for drummers to do it. Uh, I don't know why. I don't know why.
Phil
It's
Collins was one of the two drummers
yes,
back then.
Phil and Chester and Phil and Bill.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yes, of course, he worked with Chester for many years. Um, both incredible drummers, of course.
Of course, of course,
Both incredible.
of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Favorite?
So, does your songwriting process change through years because of music technology's evolution?
Yes, it does, because these days it is possible to um, do very fully formed sketches.
Hmm.
And computer technology means you can create a garage band on an iPhone. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the way it is these days. Um, of course, many albums are made with a combination of a producer who is the keyboard player, the programmer, and the singer. This is it. That's it. Most pop records seem to be made like this. It's a very small team and sometimes a very big sound.
And
Um,
then there were three.
and then there were three, and then there
Yeah.
was one. You know,
Yeah.
so yes, I work differently, but I actually write not always on my own, but I write with my wife Jo, who is an incredible writer, um, not just of lyrics but also of musical melodies. And she's written books, and she's directed films, and she's very, very modest, but very,
Wow.
very clever. So I write with her. I write with currently writing with Roger King and with Rob Townsend, and it's very, very interesting working in a team where sometimes the challenge will just be to have a set of words, and I'll be thinking, how the hell am I going to make this work? And then the penny drops. There have been a couple of occasions in recent years when I thought, yeah. And sometimes these things become favorite songs because um, I wouldn't say I had confidence to bring other people's ideas to life. Normally, I have to dream on it. I have to think, how am I going to do this? What are we aiming for here? So the process is different. Nobody really knows where music comes from. We have the influence of greatness in our histories. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants: Bach, Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, Mozart, Grieg, Chopin, Ravel, Debussy, Eric Satie, and Mikas Theodorakis. But you know, we have all of this, but you know, uh, nobody knows, where does melody come from. I think it comes from spirit in some way. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to dream it, or I wake up with something on my mind and I write it down straight away, because memory is fallible.
Of course. So let's go for one more question back to the Genesis era.
Yeah.
What was the difference in musical terms, in technical musical terms, between Genesis of Peter Gabriel and Genesis after Peter Gabriel? You were in front of that rock history event.
Yeah.
What is the musical difference between those eras?
Well, I think during that time, I learned to be a fully fledged writer. I was capable of writing whole albums on my own. That happened over all of the years in Genesis from 1971 to 77. So the difference is that I went through personal evolution. The band evolved. We lost a great writer and a great front man and a great humanitarian with Pete. And I think you find in the early days, there is more social comment and awareness. You have the aspect of politics influencing the music. I think latterly that became less important, although I was always aware of the importance of it myself. And so when I was writing a song like Blood on the Rooftops from Wind and Wuthering, I wanted there to be a social message, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't that focused on it. Just the idea of an imaginary father and son channel surfing, switching priorities. What is the priority? And I think it was dealing with the idea of something that we now call compassion fatigue.
Okay.
Okay.
Thodori.
So, yes, your live versions of Genesis songs, for us, according to our opinion, have a more Floydish vibe than the recorded versions. What was your opinion for Pink Floyd back then?
Well, first of all, when I heard Pink Floyd, I thought they were perhaps more of a blues band than Genesis. There was the influence of blues. But over time, I'd come to realize how very, very good the lyrics were in terms of addressing another kind of issue, and that is sanity itself. What these songs were rhythmically often somnambulant, but they were also an exploration of the human mind, the outer limits of what was possible, and in terms of addressing what I think of as the walking wounded. So many people were wounded by drugs. I had friends whose lives were shattered by drugs, friends who died before they were even out of their teens because of drugs. The 1960s, the roll call of the young was quite extensive, and I had my heart broken because of this. And I think Floyd addressed this issue, the idea of pain, perhaps more than any other band.
Because of Sid Barrett, especially.
Yeah,
I think
yes.
because they had in amongst them in their ranks, they had somebody who was initially young and brilliant, and then became a casualty, a victim of the times in which he lived, and they catalogued this. Shine On You Crazy Diamond,
Wish You Were Here.
perhaps Wish You Were Here, perhaps so much of Dark Side of the Moon, and many other aspects.
Yeah.
So I think they were a very great band indeed. Again, you've got the dynamic of the very competitive aspect, which I think is partly the educational system that they were subject to, much like Genesis, the idea of people who were abused in school.
Did
education, yeah.
Did you feel them as competitors?
No, I think we knew them as friends. I sometimes bump into Nick Mason, I've met Roger Waters. I was at something with David Gilmour. We didn't get to talk on that occasion, but I hope one day to say hi.
Yeah.
I didn't get to meet Nick Mason, but I get a feeling of this idea that perhaps he was quite gentle. Perhaps it's interesting. Some people's work with bands can be quite invisible, but as I say, all bands, it's to do with all of the individuals. Everyone plays their part with this.
Yeah. Of course. So, Theodori?
Okay. Yes, okay. How did you came up with such innovative guitar techniques as the tapping and the sweep picking? Were you trying to be different, or it was just a songwriter-driven process?
Well, sometimes working with Genesis, they could be a very difficult band. So I was trying to impress them, I think, first of all. And but nothing I did ever impressed them, so it doesn't make any difference. You could be the fastest gun on earth, and for a while with the tapping technique, when you hear the solo on Dancing with the Moonlit Night, for 5 seconds I was the fastest gun, on the planet. But there's always someone faster, and there's it's a technique where you play so fast. You're not actually hearing all the notes that are coming out. You have to slow it down like that. It's like Bruce Lee catching flies, doing things that the camera can't see.
Yeah.
But it's only one technique. Sometimes that's it. I often joke about this with the book, about Genesis, like playing to a bunch of Russian ice skating judges, Think of the Duchenes, the incredible moves, and the Russians are always marking them down and then copying them the next year.
Yes, yes.
That's the price of innovation. But you have to
Okay.
think it's for the listener. It isn't for the professionals. Professionals compete. Listeners hopefully are affected emotionally by it, and sometimes it's better not to know. It's like when I go and see a play and I'm watching live actors. I never have the feeling that there's one actor on the stage who's better than anyone else. I just see that they're all giving their all, and this is important for me, at least.
That's art. That's art.
That's art.
It's called art.
For sure.
Yes, art.
Of course.
For sure.
And live art is very important, and I hope, of course, that we will, touch wood. We vaccine, post-vaccine, post-COVID, the world will get together again, and we will realize what an extraordinary thing we've been missing out on. So I say peace and love to the world. Let's open up our hearts. Otherwise, what we have is a world where half the people are going to be in prison and the other half of the people are going to be eating steak and champagne.
We miss so much the live performances. As you,
of course,
we miss so much.
Genesis have written many lyrics about that kind of stuff and that post-apocalyptic world. Peter Gabriel, in his early days, has imagined that world.
Yes, well, I think that there's a word that someone was using recently, dystopian. And it's the opposite of utopian. The idea of utopia is this glorious future. Dystopia is the kind of post-Holocaust, every man for himself. And we are building a dystopian future at the moment. We are very aware of this. I'm going to preach. We're destroying the animals, the environment, greed, everything, and we've got a chance to make this a really fucking fantastic world, and we're screwing it up.
Okay, Dimitris.
So, as we can see in your live albums, Genesis Revisited, etc., all that kind of stuff, which in their majority, all the songs of Genesis in their majority have very complicated orchestrations. And you need a very large amount of musicians on stage in order to perform those songs. How did you manage to do it back with the Genesis band?
Well, you don't have to have an orchestra to play Genesis stuff. There is classical influence and there's complicated harmony, sophisticated harmony. But most stuff was written in the rehearsal room with an idea that we would do this with a minimum amount of overdubs. And often this stuff was tested in front of audiences before we made the albums. So the other approach is the modern approach, where you start with the computer and you've already got hundreds of tracks at your disposal. But it is possible to sit down and play even a very complicated arrangement on one guitar if you put in enough effort. You know, I mean, there was a guitarist who sent something to me recently. It was a version of I'm thinking of, it was a classical piece, you know, with huge choir and everything, Carmine Burana, and he was playing it all on one nylon guitar. So it is possible, and there have been jazz versions of Genesis, and pianists who sit down and play Tony's harmonies and just do it on one piano. So it can be broken down. It doesn't. You don't have to have a fortune to do it. And of course, early keyboards, we had the mellotron, we had the organ, the synth came a little bit later. So with just 3 keyboards really, and a Hohner pianette, a little thing put through a fuzz box, sometimes, you know, that would be enough to conjure a whole orchestra. So it can be done. It's, you know, Genesis was not unique in this way. The Beatles used the mellotron, the Moody Blues, King Crimson. So all of those bands used mellotron to great effect, I think.
Yeah, mellotron has a very large amount of those frequencies that creates that effect of something very complete. And you used it very wisely.
Yeah, it was in some ways limited, but it was the effect, the sketch, the idea of perhaps an alienated sense of an orchestra.
Yeah.
But it certainly gave you the power to be able to, you know, compete with electric guitars and saxophones, and placed on stun to destroy. It could it could be a very a formidable beast.
So, thank you.
Okay,
Let's go to the final two final questions.
2 final questions, yes, for you. And the first one is, did you contact Phil Collins during the process of writing his biography, Not Dead Yet?
Well, the last time I contacted Phil, I didn't hear anything back. So we were in the same airport, and I sent him a text and message, and I didn't hear anything back. So I'm still waiting for the call.
Okay.
Okay.
If he ever called,
remind him that you know,
we'll send him a message.
Yeah. If we will ever make an interview with him, we will let him know that he has to make a phone call.
Thank you. Yes, indeed.
You're welcome.
Indeed. I mean, I still love him, so it's I love them all. I'm open all the time.
Okay.
So, thank you very much for tonight. Let's do a final one, which is a bridge with our next guest. Our next guest next Tuesday is Arjen Lucassen of Aereon Project.
Right.
And let's do the bridge with that guest, because you have participated in his album Theory of Everything with Keith Emerson, etc. What are your memories from that participation?
Well, I remember enjoying doing it, and so I say hi to Mr. Lucassen, and best of luck with things in the future. So, extraordinary. Keith Emerson was a friend of mine. We nearly formed a band. He asked me to form a band with Jack Bruce and Simon Phillips, and we played
Wow.
together. We played together for 3 days, and we were going to write an album together. But it didn't happen, and 2 of those guys have gone now. But on my last album, I worked with Simon Phillips, so he's on one of the tracks. He and I have worked together occasionally.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. All
So,
great musicians. Wonderful.
of course. So, thank you very much for tonight, Mr. Hackett. It was an honor.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
was
thank
an
you
honor.
very much. Lovely talking to you. Hope to come to Greece soon.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we have to see you performing live.
Yes. Well, I'm a big fan of Greece. I've been there many times and visited many times with my wife, and my wife is a great student of all things Greek. I'm encouraging her one day to write a book about
Yeah.
ancient Greece. She's an absolute expert in this. She's telling me every day new
Great.
words and things I've never heard of. It's
When you will come, even for holidays, just let us know because we will be more than glad to meet you
Thank
in
you.
person.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
We
Yes.
can have a coffee together if you want, in order to expand
Absolutely. Yes.
our
Yes.
conversation unofficially.
Yes. Yes.
Of course. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for
Thank you
tonight,
so much.
Mr.
It's been a
Hackett.
great honor for me. Thank you very much. I hope to come and play there sometime.
Of course.
We too.
We,
We too.
we, we live under the eye of the same sun, of
Oh,
course.
indeed.
Yes.
So
We do.
it will be a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
See you guys.
Beyond time and space, rainbow wave.
So, Dimitri, I think you will agree with me that we were very happy talking with Mr. Steve Hackett tonight.
We are very happy, and that was a chat to be remembered because too many things have been said about his early days with Genesis, his solo career, and all the rock history in the making. We have heard about Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, all those men that mean everything to the rock history. And Steve Hackett has many myths, legends, and real stories to tell about them.
And I hope that our viewers will like the show as we did.
This was In the Air Tonight with Thodoris.
And Dimitris,
So please subscribe here to watch our weekly episodes with other amazing guests.
yes.
Thank you for tonight.
Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead. And
See you
until next,
Tuesday.
yes.
We'll be with you with our uploads.
Bye
So
bye for now.
bye
Bye
bye.
bye.